Hi, I'm Hayley Walsh, author of Making March in Crayons and Chaos, but I'm here today to share with you my review of historical fiction book titled Discerning Grace. Historical fiction is not usually a genre I tend to pick up and read, but I'm so glad I did. Discerning Grace by Emma Lombard has it all: family drama, betrayal, adventure, camaraderie, suspense, and love. What more could you want in a good book? The book is the first in the White Sails series, so you have been warned, my friend. If you read this book, you will be waiting eagerly for books 2 and 3. The author takes us back to London in the 1800s, where we meet our protagonist. Young Grace Baxter is full of spunk and decides to flee from her lot in life after discovering her family has promised the disgusting Lord Silverton her hand in marriage. She flees disguised as a lad and subsequently finds herself being lured aboard the HMS Discerning by a charismatic recruiter named Gilly. It's the perfect disguise, and she agrees as she has nothing to lose. She already has Gilly fooled, so why not? Once aboard, she meets handsome Lieutenant Seamus Fitzwilliam, who is second in command. Grace is headstrong and more than capable of keeping up with her fellow young men on the ship. Only problem is, her identity and gender are revealed when she is punished, pants down, waiting to be flogged in front of her fellow seamen. Seamus quickly vows to protect Grace from harm, but is she the only one who needs protecting? For lovers of adventure, romance, intrigue, and period drama, this book is most definitely for you. Emma has created engaging characters, unsuspecting twists and turns, romance, and heart-stopping adventure on the high seas. If you are a fan of historical fiction, I highly recommend this well-written and entertaining book that will have you turning the pages. The book can be found on the Australian Book Lovers website. I give it 5 stars.
Once upon a time. Welcome to Australian Book Lovers, your destination for imagination.
A big warm welcome to everyone and a huge thank you for joining us once again for the Australian Book Lovers podcast. Our mission, as always, is to bring fabulous Australian and Indigenous literature spanning a whole range of genres to book lovers all around the globe, as well as fantastic resources and information for passionate authors looking to write their next bestseller. I am Darren Kazenko, science fiction and horror author, reader, and one of your hosts and co-founder of Australian Book Lovers, coming to you today from Corner Country.
And I'm Veronica Strachan, fantasy, memoir, and picture book writer, reader, and your other co-founder and host for this, our 25th episode, coming to you today from Wurundjeri, Woiwurrung country.
Yes, 25. That's
25 is a good number.
It is. It was
quarter of a century.
Good or bad for Buck Rogers? Didn't he wake up in the 25th century? Or was it?
Oh,
I can't remember. Or was that Duck Dodgers, the Daffy Duck, in the 25th and a half century?
Not entirely sure, but talking about centuries and the future and the globes and the cosmos, we have a great interview today with Averil Drummond, who's written a fabulous book, Gloam. It's a YA climate, Cli-Fi, I think. Yeah, so science fiction, but about global warming and, looking after the planet. So Buck Rogers would be proud.
Yes, and I love that term, Cli-Fi.
Yeah.
And I think obviously it's going to be a very prominent theme moving forward in a lot of literature, a lot of art in general. It is very important. But yes, episode 25, we've got a fantastic guest. And, 25, 1/4, a huge milestone for us nonetheless.
Yes.
Considering we started at little old number 1, and here we are at 25.
Yes, and getting some good feedback, which is lovely. We get bits and pieces on all of our social media platforms, and we had an email the other day saying, one of our readers, Barbara, was enjoying the new genres, because if people are not on the newsletter and are just listening to the podcast, haven't seen the website for a while, you'll notice we have 3 new beautiful mascots. So mascot 1 is for biography and memoir, a lovely wombat, which is
Yes,
Darren's
awesome
favourite.
wombat, yes.
Looking into a mirror, reflecting in a mirror, which is fantastic. And that was Barbara's favourite. She was saying her to-be-read pile is getting very big. But as we heard a couple of episodes ago, never be embarrassed by how big your to-be-read pile is. I can't remember. One of our authors said that. And we've got a young adult mascot who is a very slick-looking snake with a hat and a pair of shades, reading a book. And that's for readers from 12 to 18. But, of course, lots of adults read young adult as well. And our third new mascot is our middle grade. I was going to say middle age. That's what I'm feeling at the moment. But middle grade, and that is from 8 to 12 years old. So those books that are starting to be chapter books or, got a little bit more length and content in them for those middle grades at school. So there you go.
And what an adventure it was to go from, the C-Spot run books to suddenly, once you realise as a little tacker that you can pick any book and,
Yes,
the chapters
yeah.
and there's these huge adventures waiting for you within the pages. And boy, that is just one of the memories that one of the most vivid memories I still carry is that feeling of walking into a library and everything is possible, especially when you're a little kid, still is as an adult, but because you've got to remember, I have to remember that until you reach a certain age, the physical world that you live in is quite small. It may be limited to your bedroom, your lounge room, your kitchen and your school with a park thrown in and you're not on your own. You're not heading to the city on your own or traveling, or most kids aren't anyway. So, but the book can take you anywhere. It can take you across the universe. It can take you underground. It can take you back in time to dinosaurs. And so that, that promise for your imagination, looking at all those books is just a beautiful feeling that I love, and I hope I never forget, and I hope I continue to enjoy.
Yes. I don't think reading will ever tire from entertaining me.
No, neither do I. But now I think number 25, we should jump into some news.
Yes. What have you got for us? Have you got some spotlight on some of our fabulous books?
Absolutely. I've got. I'd love to put a bit of a spotlight on some of the books on the Australian Book Lovers website, and I thought I would start with none other than a book called Gloam by Averil Drummond. So, considering that she is our very wonderful guest today, and Gloam can be found under our science fiction genre, and the synopsis is as follows: two scientists, Frieden and Kiera, work together at an animal sanctuary and form a romantic attachment. Enter Rosie, young and attractive, but very immature, and her family. Fate brings them together, and the result will change all their futures as life on Gloam falls apart around them. Some will separate, others die, some find love where they never expect it. Rosie will be taken to a life that she could not have imagined. A child will be born to continue his race, and love will, at least partially, win over misery and gloom. Gloam is a tale of romantic love, family love, loss and hard decisions, which takes place on an Earth-like planet somewhere in the universe. There is no science fiction. Everything that happens could be true. There is sadness, but also happiness and fun, as two species deal with day-to-day life in turbulent times. And that is Gloam by Averil Drummond, and once again under our science fiction genre. And we've also, talking of middle grade, we've had some fantastic trilogy submitted for listing by an author by the name of Margaret R. Blake. And the trilogy is called Merlin's School for Ordinary Children. And that obviously is, being a trilogy, has 3 books, with the first one called The Ring of Curses. So, Calder Cove, a quiet seaside village. Or is it? When a strange medieval castle appears out of nowhere, the townsfolk are thrown into utter turmoil. Time reveals that the building is a school, one where children are locked away, a cursed ring is stolen, a boy vanishes, and a golden door materializes inside an empty room. Is the village and its people doomed? And the second chapter, well, shall I say the second entry into the trilogy, is called Sword of Stone. Reads as follows. Another year, and the strange school looms over Calder Cove still. Despite protests from parents and some offspring, it puts out a call for potential pupils to walk through the gates. This year, the headmaster issues a dire warning, one that is ignored. Subsequently, a portal to another dimension is opened, trapping 5 students inside. The only way out involves the retrieval of a much coveted magical sword. Will everyone escape, or will they fall victim to those who reside there? And that was The Sword of Stone, and the gripping, I guess, finish to the trilogy is called The Grail and Back Again. And it reads, it is the 3rd year since the strange castle, known to the residents of Cold Cove as Merlin's School, appeared in the seaside town. They are still viewing it with trepidation, more so this year as things that had been accepted, though odd, suddenly become dark and dire when a teacher is killed. Students are now more than ever reluctant to enter the confines of the building, but their choices are removed by an enchantment that draws the selected few in. Will they find out who the murderer is, or will the murderer find them first? And that is The Grail and Back Again, and that is part of Merlin's School for Ordinary Children trilogy by Margaret R. Blake, and you can find that under our middle grade genre. So brand new edition. Thank you very much, Margaret.
Lovely.
And I just wanted to highlight a couple of books, and by no means is this the extensive list, because I think there's at least 10. But we have coming up very soon in one of the very next episodes is an interview with Mr. Jack Kregas, who has written so many books. He's a fantastic character on his own, let alone the characters he writes.
He is prolific, isn't he?
Yes, absolutely. So the first book I'd like to spotlight is called Club Cargo. And once again, that is by Jack Kregas, and you can find that under our mystery genre. Neighbourhoods in Boston during the 1960s were in the grip of Irish and Italian gangs. Willie Shine was a young gambler with an ambitious proposal to open up a nightclub. Permission from gangster boss Jack Ross was needed. What could go wrong? Club Cargo became the in-place to be in Boston until it was attacked in a drive-by shooting. Who was to blame? Who would benefit? Willie was left without knowing who or why as he followed a trail of deception to an unexpected showdown. An insight into the world of gangsters, gambling, trust, deception, and revenge, written with the slang, the music, and the values of the era. That is Club Cargo by Jack Kregas. And another title that you'll find under our mystery genre, also by Mr. Jack Kregas, is Mystical Glasses. So the synopsis for Mystical Glasses is: Joey was a poker player with a history who found the mystical glasses that allowed him to win at cards. He enjoyed taking down the casinos and spending their money. Life was good for Joey and his female friend. Then it all changed from fun to living in fear. Stalked by a psychopathic killer out for revenge and the glasses, Joey is now faced with staying alive. A crime thriller with characters from today's headlines where the innocent and the guilty change place to satisfy their own ambitions. Jack Kregas' personal knowledge as a poker player and casino client is evident in this crime fiction thriller. Familiar locations authenticate the storyline with twists and turns, astonishing the reader. And that is Mystical Glasses by Jack Kregas. And that would be an interesting read because, as you will discover when we do get to his fantastic interview, he is a bit of a professional poker player who plays in many tournaments around the world. So, writing from something he knows, I'm sure it's good fun.
There you go.
All of those books obviously can be found on the Australian Book Lovers website. And the list continues to grow. We are constantly getting new books to list on the website. And as soon as I finish recording here, I'll be putting a whole lot more on.
Very good. But keep them coming, people. We are very happy to have more and to blow out people's to-be-read pile. That's fine.
Yes, and look, it can be tricky to have a whole stack there of to-be-read piles, and now that I know that the embarrassment part doesn't come from the titles you're reading.
No.
But however, visitors to the website may discover when you go to the For Author page, there is a new button, which is definitely an invitation for authors to submit short stories. So if you have written a short story or you'd like to write a short story of any genre at all, 3,000 words or less, please do submit it to our website, because we will be very soon incorporating a new feature on the website with very bite-sized, or what did you call them, Veronica?
10-minute bites, yeah.
10-minute bites, yes. So short stories that anybody can read from any device, whether you're standing on a train or standing in a line waiting for your lunch or sitting on a bus or waiting in a waiting room, anywhere, any part of the day, or just sitting there having lunch. It's going to be fantastic. So we're going to cover all genres and you'll be able to read it straight from the website website, or you'll be able to download it for future reading down. So you might want to put together a bit of a collection and start reading a whole bunch at once. Again, genre, there is no limits. The only limit at this stage is 3,000 words or less. If you can do a cover, that would be fantastic. If not, we're happy to put a cover together for you. We're hoping that it's going to look a little bit like Netflix. So you'll be able to jump to the short stories and scroll through your selected genre and look at all the great titles. With a touch of the finger, you'll be reading in no time. You'll go from the beginning to the end in 10 minutes or under and have a massive bolt of lightning to your imagination.
Very
so
good.
Yes, if you are an author, we'd love to have your short stories. We'd love to host your short stories, and we may even be turning some of them into audio short stories very soon. But one thing at a time, and that is first, we need your short stories.
Indeed,
so
we do.
go to www.australianboooklovers.com/for-authors, and you'll find two buttons. One, you'll find the submission of, obviously, for authors looking to submit their work, their novels on the website for listing, but there's also now the button for short stories, and it's a very simple process. Only take you a couple of moments and they'll be up, and you'll be keeping me very busy. But that
Excellent.
is my news for today.
That's good, and lots of news. So because you've had lots of news, I thought I'd do something a little bit different today.
Ooh.
And there's a couple of things to talk about. One is neologisms, which I've got that right because I Googled how to say it.
I'm glad you said it.
Yeah. Neologisms are newly coined words or expressions. So things like webinar, malware, blogosphere, they're kind of just a few examples.
Cli-Fi.
Sorry?
Cli-Fi.
Yeah, Cli-Fi, exactly, of new words that are kind of dropping into everyday language. And that's one part of it. So, being accepted into the mainstream is certainly one of it. And it's driven by changes in culture and technology and the actual process of language formation, because what you talked about a couple of episodes ago around the potential for the world to have a single language, I then had discussions about that with my daughter, and she said, yeah, that would be all right, but you'd also need to have your own languages. So we could have a global language, but still keep your own language. And then I thought, oh yeah, I'd be a bit happy with that. But anyway, it's the process. And I was thinking and looking at language, the process of language is ever changing. So we do absorb new words, but a lot of neologisms are found in fiction because authors make them up, and particularly things like science fiction and films and television, those kind of things. So laser, light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. Robot was from a Czech writer, Karel Capek's play RUR, which is Rossum's Universal Robots. Agitprop, which is a combination of agitation and propaganda. So lots of different words that writers make up. And it's interesting, we have heard writers say that even though they make the word up, because they're fiction writers, they will often get people challenging either the word or the ideas that they've written. And so it's an interesting, I guess, balance of putting in words that you think, oh, that's a new word, and then the stuff that then drops into everyday language. And you can often know who is a fan of a particular author by the words that would pepper their language. If anybody talks about the Grishaverse, well, they know that they're a fan of, Leigh Bardugo, who wrote about the Grishaverse in Shadow and Bone, and I think she's got about 7 books out in that world. So neologisms, made up words.
Well, I think I might actually adopt that word, and I can proudly say from this point forward, I'm not a bad speller, I'm a neologist.
Ah, very good. I hadn't thought of that application.
Yes,
idea.
that is how I meant to spell it. It is a new word. No, but it is fascinating, and sort of drawing back to that conversation we had on one of the previous podcasts about the thought experiment of whether we would be better as a human race if we had one language connected that way, or do we still try and connect as different races and cultures, which doesn't seem to be working at the moment. But anyway, still fascinating to me. I can only speak for the English language, although, you know, my wife's Japanese, so I love watching her write the kanji characters and stuff.
Beautiful.
And each, you know, it's a very symbolic language, obviously. And, you know, each little stroke represents, you know, possibly, you know, one kanji character may require 2 or 3 sentences of description, for example, from the English language.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's still very fascinating to me that the English language, of which is my natural language, is only 26 letters.
Yes.
And just with that small number, the combination of words obviously is eternal.
Yes.
It's infinite. It has no end.
Yeah.
And so whatever needs to be described can be described. It's just waiting for someone to describe it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yes, so it's a different, you know, there are many different languages obviously around the world, but I think each of them is still at the base is just our way of describing the world around us. And I think every language has that capability. I don't think you know, one language has a better ability to describe things than another one. And the beautiful thing about language, of course, is the ability to consistently invite new words into the dictionary, so to speak. And so how else can we do that but to invent them?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And look, they come from all sorts of places. You know, you can get words from, and I'm trying to promote writers here, of course. So from characters, you know, Scrooge, Quixotic, which is from, you know, Don Quixote, 1984. People kind of know that you can, you know, or Kafkaesque from Frank Kafka, thinking about Charles Christmas Carol Scrooge. Then you can go on to show Pollyanna. You can think of, you know, all the bits and pieces that have come, like a Catch-22, for example, that everybody kind of knows what the Catch-22 is, and yet it was in fact the title of a book of Joseph Heller's novel. So cyberspace was invented by an author, a quark.
Well, I mean, when I was in high school, matrix was a horrible mathematical equation that
no longer.
I never got my head around. Now it's black jackets and bullet time.
Yes. And, you know, now when you have deja vu, you go, oh, I had a glitch in the matrix. As opposed to used to be able to say I had a deja vu, but now you go, oh no, there was a glitch in the matrix. So yeah, all of those things. So mass media, and, you know, continued use. So there you go.
Yeah, and I think that's what we just discussed then highlights a little bit. It's not just inventing new words, it's also changing the use of words. You know, for example, terrific. You know, as it used to be something terrifying, which is, you know, the origin of the word terror. So, but now, of course, it's great. And so somewhere along the way, it went from meaning something to be feared and something that is, you know, scary.
Yeah.
Now we say, oh, terrific.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
But words can change their meaning, you know, and like matrix, it wasn't an invented word. It was a word that already existed, but it has a far different meaning now. And I'm sure it's still, for those high schoolers out there, I'm assuming you still got to struggle through working out how to do, you know, matrices and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Now, my second, it's still about neologisms, but I think I've mentioned this before. One of my favourite books, which is soon to come out in a real book, as in a paperback, is the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, which I absolutely love because it describes feelings that don't currently have a word in English. So, for example, this is one of my absolute favourites, and you'll know why. Ringlorn is the wish that the modern world felt as epic as the one depicted in old stories and folk tales, a place of tragedy and transcendence, of oaths and omens and fates, where everyday life felt like a quest for glory, a mythic bond with an ancient past, or a battle for survival against a clear enemy, rather than an open-ended parlour game where all the rules are made up and the points don't matter. Yeah.
So it's still, I feel like every day is still a quest, but, but that's very interesting.
Yeah. All right. What about scabulous? That's an adjective, proud of a scar on your body, which is an autograph signed to you by a world grateful for your continued willingness to play with her, even when you don't feel like it. Well,
I definitely have to admit I'm a scabulous kind of guy. I've got scars all over the place. I've got a brand new one on the top of my head, and show it off with pride. So they are. It is, well, I was talking. I think we were chatting about the doctor the most recent doctor that operated on me, and I thought of him as a collector of scars because he just loved all his photographs of all his stuff. So maybe he's a little bit. I wonder if there's a new word to be scabulous, but to be a collector of other people's scars. I wonder if we need a new word for that one. So,
yes, so there you go.
All you neologists, is it neologists out there? We need, what is a cool word for a doctor or person who loves other people's scars?
There you go. All right, two more. Wytai, which is W-Y-T-A-I, is a noun being a feature of modern society that suddenly strikes you as absurd and grotesque. From zoos to milk drinking to organ transplants, life insurance and fiction. Part of the faint background noise of absurdity that reverberates from the moment our ancestors first crawled out of the slime, but could not for the life of them remember what they got up to. What they got up to do, sorry. I quite like that one. So that's Wytai. And this is one that I think describes when we have a conversation. This is flashover. The moment a conversation becomes real and alive, which occurs when a spark of trust shorts out the delicate circuits you keep insulated under layers of irony, momentarily grounding the static emotional charge you've built up through decades of friction with the world. There you go.
Sounds like a superpower.
So that is, the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. It's absolutely worth having a look, and Simon & Schuster are going to release it as a real book very soon. You can, if you feel like you want, there's an emotion that you need a word for, you can email the author. So it's obscuresorrows@gmail.com, and they're on Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr. And you can see if you can get a word for the emotion that you want. And he's got hundreds there, and it's just fantastic. I just love it. So that's John Koenig, which is really good. That's my news.
Wonderful. I was just so sorry. I was just sitting there thinking of different emotions or aspects of reality that I wanted to invent a word for. But I better stop because it's a huge rabbit hole that I'd love to jump into.
Yeah. Look, one more. A lilo is a friendship that can lie dormant for years, only to pick right back up instantly, as if no time has passed since you last saw each other. So lots of people have experienced that, but you can say, it was a lilo, we just picked it right up. And if that was in common usage, people would know what you meant.
The word lilo makes me think of another word which I've had to bring into my vocabulary since I've just begun to play a little bit of video games online with friends of mine.
Yep.
And if you jump into a game, whether it's virtual reality or whatever it is, and where you go online and you can suddenly be with other people, the word that I don't know where it came from or who, it originated somewhere, but it's now they're called a rando. So it's like, I got stuck with a rando.
There you are, neologism.
Yes, like Lando Calrissian, only it's a rando stranger. So it's like, oh no, I got caught with a rando yesterday. But it's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Language and words really interesting, and of course, talking to authors, it's time for us to think about going into our interview with Averil Drummond.
Yeah, so how was the interview?
Look, fantastic. And, Avril was really interesting because she's spent her working life in pathology laboratories and her free time riding horses. So there's a dichotomy for you. And reading books.
Living life, definitely.
Yeah. Also with a little amateur astronomy thrown in. So she lives on 5 acres in the beautiful Lower Hunter Valley, which is north of Sydney, with a husband, the cat, 3 very spoiled horses. So I'm not quite sure how you spoil horses, but I hope that that's a good thing. And it was interesting that, talking to Avril before and some of her responses that, we asked them to just give us a little information up front and about the message in her book about, climate change. And, she said we're kind of at that stage we're riding out catastrophic bushfires and cyclones quite well. But basically most of us kind of go on as before. It's like, when the the actual stuff happens. And I think we spoke to Tanya Simons as well. It's similar, is that when the catastrophe is there, we all leap into it, but we don't then continue so well. And, you know, she talks about things getting, you know, really bad for business, and the fact that, you know, even some of the homes up in coastal New South Wales all been undermined by the sea, and, you know, really people from heavily populated coastal cities there are going to be times surely in the future with the rising waters that slowly they're going to be, you know, a lot of them will be undermined, diminishing river flows, all those kind of things. So yeah, it was a really good chat.
Yeah, it's funny. I've always wondered why we build. I mean, I know why we do. I live right on the beach, but the reality is, you know, as far as this huge land, and we put the majority of our population right on the line there.
Yeah.
The seas are going to change. I mean, when I was doing mining out in the central South Australia, in the outback there, the driest, desolate place you could imagine. It was like going onto the surface of Mars. Not that I've actually been. And you dig down, deep into the earth, and you find seashells, and the bones of sea animals. So the seas will shift. They have shifted forever, and they probably will shift forever as long as the Earth is. But yes, I think, you know, our relationship with nature is so important, and with climate. And I think it stems back to what I was mentioning before. You know, when you're a little tacker, and the world you inhabit is very confined. It is defined by one or two places, you know, your bedroom, your lounge, your school. And that is, I think it applies to a certain degree to adults as well, because most of us don't spend a great deal of time in nature. We spend most of our time in cars or vehicles traveling to and from, you know, places of commerce or places of work, you know, and if we're lucky, we get an opportunity to go for a bush walk or go for a surf or something. But the more time you spend in nature, then the more, I guess, respect you have for the delicate balance that we are lucky enough to find ourselves in. So I wonder, you know, what's going to be needed to make the changes that are required, that are desperately needed to fix the damage we've done. It's going to be very difficult to get the emotions and the passion from everybody as a collective, should I say, if we're not spending our time in that nature, because it becomes more of a abstract news theory as opposed to a, you know, very important reality just outside your window.
And you'll be able to see that Avril decided to do something, and after she'd been at a conference. So I'll let her tell the story. So without further ado, as you like to say, off to listen to Averil Drummond, the author of Gloam. And hello, listeners. Welcome to the next Australian Book Lovers author interview. And I have with me today, I'm delighted to say, is Averil Drummond. And Averil is the author of Gloam. And I'm not going to say any more about it because it has such an interesting title and it could go a whole lot of different ways. So Averil, welcome to Australian Book Lovers.
Hello, Veronica. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Now, Averil, I'm coming to you today from the lands of the Woiwurrung, the Wurundjeri people down in Victoria. Where do you live and write?
Oh, well, I live in a place called Brunkaville, which is a quite unusual name, and it's an exceptionally pretty place, so it's a well-kept secret. And it's between Lake Macquarie and Cessnock in the lower Hunter Valley. And it's the land of the Awabakal people, who are the people of the Lake Macquarie area.
Lovely. Okay. So, Avril, tell us a little bit about Gloam, if you would.
Gloam is a book about, I was inspired to write it by the COP15 climate change summit, which, you know, had enormous hype about it, and we all were hoping for great things to combat climate change and global warming, and all the world leaders were there, and then, you know, at the end of it, it sort of fizzled out, or that's the way it seemed to me, and very little actually came of it. And I hadn't written anything except a couple of scientific papers, so I was rather stupid. I was just thinking, is there anything I can do to make a tiny contribution towards the awareness of climate change?
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, oh, I'll try and write a novel and direct it more at young adults, because there's a lot of dystopian fiction about, but I think it's more directed at adults.
Mm-hmm. And
so I launched on Gloam. First I called it the Glade, but then I changed it to Gloam. So Gloam's the name of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot to say, for the COP15 climate change summit, they sort of had a competition with you could produce a sort of YouTube of whatever you liked, really, and someone got the prize. Well, of course, it wasn't me, but I wrote a poem called The Glumps of Gloam, and I thought it didn't win, of course, so I thought I'd like to get that into the book, which sort of stuck me with the planet Gloam and the main species, who are glumps.
Okay.
And that sounds like a silly name, but then I thought, the whole point is that they are rather silly people, or silly species, because they're destroying their planet. And then I thought, look at the word human, that's a silly word, really, and we use it all the time.
Yes, yep.
So anyway, I started writing the book, and I had the glumps, but I couldn't help pushing a couple of my own sort of little barrows. I thought for young adults it wouldn't hurt to have two species, like two human equivalents, because that did in fact happen in the history of the world. And I just think to include a few things like that young people might not ever really think about much wouldn't hurt. So, and a bit of astronomy, I must admit. I haven't really mentioned climate change once in the whole book. I do talk about astronomy a little bit.
Yep. But it's the message there. It's about caring for the planet. It's about destroying the planet and what happens, or what could happen.
Yes. Well, what I unfortunately believe probably will happen, but that sounds a bit morbid, doesn't it? But,
No. I think it's, some of the reality and the opportunity for, long stories to give people some education as well as some entertainment and some thought, provocation is a good thing.
Yes. Yeah. Well, anyway, it took me a long time, because COP15, I looked up, was in 2009.
Wow.
And of course, the book was only published in May last year, but I did get it into essentially the finished format by about 2015, when I put it into a little writing competition in America where it was runner-up. But that's
fantastic. Congratulations on that.
And so it's taken me quite a long time, and a lot of false starts and a lot of going back. Making your first writing venture a whole novel is a pretty stupid thing to do, let me tell anyone who's listening.
But would you do it again?
Well, I did, or I am thinking of writing a sequel, but I'm not. I have written a couple of drafts, but I don't think it's very interesting, and I don't think I've got the right sort of voice, as they like to say, for the novel. So that will take a bit more effort. And then I had another idea of writing something completely different this morning.
Very good. Came out of the blue. Sometimes they're the best, just to follow those ones.
I've had a lifetime working in pathology labs. You don't read many novels about pathology labs. So I thought maybe I could, if I can write one that's entertaining enough, it might be worth having a go.
Oh, that sounds fascinating.
Well, they say write about what you know, and I certainly know about pathology labs. So,
yes.
Anyway, that's just an idea.
But they are certainly integral in so many books and TV shows and movies. Pathologists get a starring role in many of these, and having a look under the covers, or under the the glass slide, I should say, that might be very interesting. So pathology that's all right, pathology laboratories and a little bit of astronomy. So what else keeps you occupied up in the beautiful lower Hunter Valley there? Well, I'm actually going to finish working in a month, but I have been working for 2 years casual in a hospital lab. This was after I was supposedly retired. Right.
But one of the reasons I do want to stop is because there's so much else to do. I've got 3 horses, and they produce a lot of manure that needs to be picked up. We've got about an acre of garden, which is really too much for my husband and I. And there's just so much to do. Plus, I'm in the Hunter Writers. I go to writing group once a month, and I'm a bit involved with the local greens. And things like that. So there's plenty to occupy me. And
yeah, and then you wonder when you had time to go to work. So tell me, tell me about the writing group. How long have you been with them, and how helpful do you find being involved in the group?
Well, probably joined about 3 years ago, and I would have joined earlier, only I was working full-time up till then, and then I went to 3 days, but it was a lot of travelling, so there wasn't time. So I waited till I cut down, and I find the Hunter Writers, well, moderate to very helpful, I suppose. There are other sources, but people in my writing group put me on to other things like your website, for instance, which excellent. I hadn't heard about.
Well, I greatly admire the Hunters Writers group then, if that's the case.
Yes.
They have good taste.
And yes, one of the other ladies told us about it, and they run workshops, which some of them have been very good, some of them haven't been quite so good, as is always the way. And I mean, yes, and they have competitions sort of since the start of coronavirus. They've run a sort of thing about every 3 months where they give you prompts and you can write a piece on the prompts. And also the writing group, lady that runs the writing group does that too. And I find that's very useful because I often get complete blank about what to write about. And if I'm forced to write onto a prompt, I almost invariably can think of something to write, and sometimes it's okay. So
very good.
So I think it's okay. I've made people in the group laugh and things like that. So, so I think that's, it has been good. And the first group, which sort of split up and then closed, but nothing to do with me, asked us to write a poem. And I'd never written a serious poem in my life. I'd written the Glumps of Gloam, things like that. And I took it seriously. She said, I want you to write a poem for our next group where no one knows what happens. So I agonised and sweated blood over how was I going to write this poem? And eventually I came up with quite a short poem. And everyone in the group said, oh, that's lovely. And, I thought, oh, perhaps I can write poems. And so I have actually been writing poems ever since as well.
Oh,
in
lovely.
fact, yes, it's
opened your mind, it sounds like, and offered some different avenues for learning and expressing yourself.
Yes, and yes, like I said, I would have never thought of writing a serious poem until she said that. And the funny thing was that nobody else did it. She didn't remember she'd even asked us to do it.
So you were very good and did your homework with the only one.
Yes, I was. But, I'm not a great fan of modern poetry as such, in that I don't really feel the need to zigzag down the page or, put lots of dots or write things that are, I must say, to me, are totally incomprehensible. So I won't make much of a successful career as a poet. I know that. But
you just never know.
But anyway.
Very good. Now, tell me, Avril, what was behind your decision to write for young adults?
Well, I wanted to write for young adults because I thought they're the people that will be alive or making decisions when climate change becomes really bad. And I think a lot of people say, oh, my generation, your generation, we caused the problem. But especially when I was young, we had no idea about climate change, or plastic pollution or anything like that. We all thought it was a wonderful new world and everything was wonderful, post-war sort of thing. And young people, I don't think they've got that excuse. They do know now, and if they don't do anything about it, then, you know, it's sort of lack of interest. I don't care. I've got other things to think about. So I did want to direct the book at young adults, but the funny thing is they don't seem to like it all that as much as I thought they would. And I've had I'm not sure. I haven't had much feedback from young adults, but I have had feedback from adults and they do seem to like it. So
very good.
So that's rather unusual.
So do you think they're getting the message? So, you know, perhaps tell us the message that's in the book and what you feel that it's urging.
Well, I think the adults are, yes. I just really don't know how many young adults have read it, because, of course, my friends are all largely adults, and I do know one of my friend's children left it on the train or something, and so didn't even finish it, things like that. But, you know, I mean, I mainly thought young adults because I thought, well, I'm not that, you know, I'm not a literary writer. I tend to prefer books with I don't usually read light books. I usually read, you know, things like Hilary Mantel and things like that. And I thought, you know, I didn't want to insult people's intelligence by presenting my sort of rather, you know, story. It's just a story, you know, about these species. And I thought they wouldn't find it interesting, but people have said they found it entertaining and interesting. So,
which is good. So,
it's
you
good,
know, builds your confidence in your ability. So tell me, what sort of thing do you like to read? You mentioned Mantel there. What else? What's your favourite reads?
Well, I wouldn't say Hilary Mantel. I think she's brilliant, but I really do get sick of reading people being burned at the stake.
Bit violent, yes.
Yeah, I find that is a major put-off. But well, at the moment, I'm actually reading the last John le Carré book, you know, that he wrote before he died.
Right.
I wouldn't say I was one of his fans, but I do enjoy reading one every now and again. And then I'm very lucky that I live near Kurri, and Kurri, I wouldn't say is the most literary society on the planet. So a lot of modern books that everyone's reading and normally you'd have to buy are sitting on the shelves in the library waiting for me to pick up. So I picked up Room Made of Leaves by Kate Grenville, which will be my next book. So, you know, I really don't have a one author I really like, and many of the listeners probably won't have heard of him, is David Lodge. Are you familiar with David Lodge?
No.
Sorry? That's interesting because he's a very good writer and he's English and he's, I believe, very popular in England. And he has written some serious books, but he writes some very funny books based sort of on the academic world largely, because he was a professor at a red brick university in England.
Right, yep.
So to anyone that's listening, I do recommend the humorous David Lodge books because, you know, I can guarantee you'll enjoy them. I've foisted them on a lot of my friends and they've all said that they really like them. You know, so I suppose he's one of my favourite authors. But and I did mention in my answers the questions that I'd read that book, No Great Mischief, which I think was interesting because I'd never heard of it. I'd never heard of Alistair MacLeod, the author. And, you know, I actually just got it sort of given to me by someone who had it given to them that didn't really want to read it, you know. And when I read it, I thought, this is just a beautifully written book. If you read the back cover, it's got Margaret Atwood recommending it and things like that. And, you know, so if anyone's listening too, I think, and you come across that book, and it is a really good book to teach structure, I think, to beginner writers like me, because the way he has a sort of linear narrative but then cycles back to the past all the time, and that could be terribly confusing if he didn't do it so well. But because he does it so well, you always know where you are. And so I think as I've written one book, I'd like to approach other books more in the way of learning from them as well, to try and sort of see how the authors, structured them, how they've made them interesting and entertaining, or how they've made them, riveting and serious. Or,
yes, yep.
And I think, that's a really good way. It's an unstructured way, but it's a really good way to learn to be a writer when you start reading more like that. So
absolutely, yeah. You can see their skill as well as enjoy the story.
Yes, yeah.
So
and you still enjoy them.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Tell me, what was the most useful bit of advice that you've ever been given?
Well, I've also, apart from starting with a novel, I didn't start by getting a lot of help from anyone. And I used to go to the Sydney Writers' Festival, and years ago they had they used to have more lectures on actually how to be a writer, which they don't seem to have so much now. And well, there were useful tips. Like one lady said she always handwrites, and she said the hardest thing to maintain often in a novel is a proper timeline. So she writes on one page and she's got her timeline on the other page. And she's absolutely right, I think, because it is so easy to get confused about how old your characters are,
yes,
and things like that, and start, well, when you're a beginner like me. And the other thing I learned, I suppose, I sort of taught myself in a way, was especially with writing the poetry. I started writing poetry and I thought, this is good. This is a good poem. And then I go back to it about a month later and I think, well, it's all right, but, it's not good really.
We are our own worst critics, aren't we?
Yes. And then I thought, that's probably the best bit of advice I gave myself is I used to just write things and put them out there and sort of say, I'm pretty clever, aren't I? Read this. And now I don't. I always write something, then I go over it, then I leave it, then I go over it again, and I can always make improvements. And I think that's one thing, that they may be much better writers than me, and obviously much more experienced ones that don't need to do that so much. But when you're starting out, I think you've got to be very critical of what you've written.
It's good advice. Yeah. So tell me, where can people find you online, Avril?
Well,
well as Australian Book Lovers, of course, we can find you there.
Yes. I started I wasn't on Facebook. I haven't been a fan of Facebook, I must admit, but now I can see it has some advantages. And I so I got my own page, and then I set up a page for the book, which I just called @Gloam Novel. And some people said that's not a very good choice, but I think if you make the choice too generic, like, sort of direct people to things like young adult and that, you just don't get people focusing on you anyway, because there's just so many sites. And the other thing, Austen Macaulay, the publisher, do give you a website, but I thought it would be just my website, but it isn't. It's really their website. But so anything you want to upload, you do through them. But that's just Averil Drummond, all one word, .ampbk.com. So that's the actual website. And I'm not probably as assiduous at tending to it as I should be, but
there is so much for a writer to do. It's not just putting the words on the page, is it?
No. So I do, but I do try, especially if I've read a book that everyone's reading, like I read The Weekend by Charlotte Wood, and I had some opinions on that, so I put them up on the website, that sort of thing. If I read a book and I have opinions about it, then I'll put it on, sort of thing. So
lovely. Okay, thank you for that. Any final words for our readers and authors? Yeah.
Well, I suppose I have to spruik my book, don't I?
Absolutely. Here's your chance.
but all I can say is that I think as a book goes, it's quite readable. It's quite enjoyable. I shouldn't keep saying quite, should I? I should say it's wonderful.
It is.
No, it is my first book. It's not the greatest piece of literature ever written, but I do think anyone, if you do go to the trouble to read it, that you won't hate it. You will enjoy it. You might laugh a bit. One of my friends told me I made her cry 3 times. I thought
that's
nice
pretty good. Yes, that's
because
a
I
good
was trying to do that, and so that was good. The only funny thing about my book that I had feedback that I wasn't expecting was because it's set on another planet. I've just used a couple of different words, like I use rotes for days and revs for years, and I thought that was okay. You see, this could be inexperience of the new author, but I thought that was okay. It was quite obvious what I was talking about.
Yes.
But some people have said to me, oh, it was a bit hard, but all those funny words you put in. and there really aren't that many. And I don't think anyone, once you get into the book, I don't think you'll even notice them.
Becomes a part and parcel of that world building. Yes. And as fiction authors, we are allowed to make words up. That is our job.
Well, that's what I think too.
You could always put a glossary in the next edition, and put the words that you have made up there at the front.
Well, I did think of that. You see, there's always things you could do or you couldn't do, and some people do it and some people don't. I even wrote it was suggested to me I should write a sort of fake Wikipedia sort of introduction to it, like, about Gloam and the pocket people on it and a bit of the history and languages. And I did all that. And then I entered the book in a couple of competitions. I'm afraid I'm a bit of a competition addict.
Sounds good.
Some of the feedback I got was, we don't like books with introductions.
Oh, no.
So I took it out again.
Oh, dear. Yes. There are.
That's what I mean.
Yes. Yeah. many rules, and we can obey some of them and some not. And some.
Yes.
Write the book that you want to write, and start with there. But no, I must admit I'm very happy for the new words, or there is a word for it, isn't it? Is it neologisms, isn't it, or something like that?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think there is a thing for. I'll look that up and talk to people when we go back into the main discussion. Sorry, I've gone off track then. Yes. Back to you. Final words for you, Avril.
Oh, well, the final words are, I hope some people read my book, and I hope they actually enjoy it. I hope it's not a slog, and I think you probably will.
Yes. No, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for speaking with us today and sharing your journey to publishing, and certainly some of the really important messages in Gloam. In that there's some climate fiction gradually getting more and more of a following now. So good luck with Gloam, and I hope you get many readers.
Thank you very much, Victoria, and good luck with the website.
Okay.
Of course. Okay.
Bye for now.
Goodbye.
Avril, thank you so much for what was an absolutely wonderful interview, and you must have had a fantastic time, Veronica, and some really important themes.
Yeah.
And obviously, the pleasure of giving, or the pleasure that we had discussing about neologism. Did I say that right?
Neologisms.
Neologisms. So thank you, Avril, for inspiring that conversation and that tongue twister.
Yes.
But yeah, that was fantastic. So the conversation regarding, the importance of the climate is something that helped to inspire my 2 quotes for this episode. What inspired your quotes today?
Well, a little bit of that, and also thinking about the action and thinking about what Avril spoke about, and the fact that she wanted to share some ideas with young adults, although, as she mentioned, lots of older people seem to be reading her book as well. So my first quote is from Gloria Steinem, and, Gloria, who is now, I think she's well into her 80s now, into her late 80s even. She was an American feminist, journalist, social political activist, and did a lot of work in that sphere. And I've read many of her books. One of my favourite quotes is that we teach what we need to learn and write what we need to know.
Okay, I'm just musing that over. We teach
what we need to learn and write what we need to know. And
what's the difference between knowing and learning, do you think?
It's interesting. It so often happens that when I'm working with a team or an individual and they're expressing a desire to learn either a skill or to talk about an emotion or an action or whatever it is, that I often will see the reflection of what they're asking about in my life, or I'm able to bring, that to me. So I learn when I'm teaching them what they need to learn. So I think that is why it resonates so much. But then what we need to know is, we write what we need to know. So when I'm exploring things for myself, and I think you and I have talked about this before, the themes that come up in our writing, and then we realise as we've described a character or our plot has gone a particular way, that it comes along with the kind of themes that we have in our life, which for me is exploring potential and getting, women out there as being the hero or heroines in their own lives. So yeah, we teach what we need to learn and we write what we need to know.
So basically there's a feedback loop when it comes to with knowledge and understanding.
Yeah. Nothing is in isolation. Yeah.
Yes. But that's cool.
Yeah. What have you got for me?
Okay, I have a quote, it is a quote from Percy Bysshe Shelley.
Indeed, yep.
I hope I said that right. Anyway, the quote is, away from men and towns, to the wild wood and the downs, to the silent wilderness where the soul need not repress its music. So yes, I think what we were discussing before about getting out to going for a bushwalk. Yeah.
I really like that.
I'm addicted to bushwalking and hiking and getting out to nature. And when I don't have the opportunity to get out, I do notice it. It is there's something. It's like a pressure cooker, I think, day-to-day life. And the release valve is, it's oddly enough, it's nature itself. So if I can't get out to nature, then I definitely feel it to the point where it begins to overtake my thoughts. I really want to get away. I want to just be able to shut down everything and stand there and feel the breeze on my face and smell all the, the leaves around me and hear the birds and feel the, listen to the crunching of stones or underneath my feet. It's a beautiful thing. So
it is, and it is absolutely so restorative to get out there and let the energy of the country and the soil and the, the fauna and the flora and all of that to just connect to your soul again and charge those batteries. Yep.
Absolutely, yeah.
Beautiful.
And even, look, when I come back from the city, if I spend a lot of time in the city, even if it's only for a half a day or a day, where I live, you've got to sort of, from the city, you go up a bit of a hill and then down the other side. And so the second you get to the top of the hill and then the ocean erupts down below you, there's like a sigh of relief of like, oh, yes, I'm out. And then you drive down and instantly the weather changes because you've got that sea breeze coming and it's a completely different atmosphere, I guess. So, yeah, I guess I'm addicted to nature, definitely.
Very good. Very good.
And what is your second quote?
All right. So second quote, a little bit different, and it's about just ideas, I guess, and changing from an idea to writing. So this is from Eudora Welty, another American, but she was a short story novelist and wrote about the American South a lot. Died in 2001. So she's from Jackson, Mississippi. There you go, in the US. But the quote that I like is, daydreaming had started me on the way, but writing, once I was truly in its grip, took me and shook me awake.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
I really like that one.
Yeah, so I really want to congratulate authors. Anybody who finishes a book is just brilliant, because you've done what so many more people who just daydream about writing a book or who do a few scribbles and don't get any further, you have allowed writing to grip you and shake you awake. And that's, I love that.
And it's a good kind of a way to be. You just mentioned 2001 and I'm thinking, wow, it's 20 years ago now. And look, there's a lot of changes, but realistically the changes are in entertainment delivery. That's about it. We're still driving cars. We're still going to work 9 to 5 or, Monday to Friday and, still got aeroplanes. Nothing's changed since 2001. Unless, of course, you're a writer, and because, the 2001, the movie or the book by Arthur C. Clarke was written way before 2001. So don't rely on the world to ignite your imagination, so to speak, or let your imagination become real. Let writing turn your imagination real, because the world moves at a very slow pace, whereas the mind can go anywhere.
Yes,
and
true.
Starting when you decide to write, let's talk about getting set free. And talking about the matrix before, you can awake yourself into a wonderful matrix that is the imagination. And when you write, it really becomes a palace in your brain.
Yeah, I like that. A palace in your brain. Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Endless rooms. Yeah. And beanbags, depending on what you want to write. I'm picturing Crystal Palace with purple furry beanbag. It's my little place.
There you go. All right. What's your next quote for me?
So my next quote is a short one by a gentleman called John Ruskin, and the quote is, "Nature is painting for us, day after day, pictures of infinite beauty." I think it's straight to the point. And
absolutely, and describes
beauty.
What you were talking about before about going out and just letting the artistry of the world, I guess, inspire you.
Well, I mean, I'm lucky enough where I am, where I can take a kayak and go into what's called the Onkaparinga River, but that actually feeds to the ocean. So you paddle for about half an hour from launch along the river, which is basically cliffs on one side and sand dunes on the other. And then you come to a point where you turn 90 degrees and I feel like a little bit like Indiana Jones, because the tide's coming in, you got to go against it and there's waves. But as you turn, suddenly you're confronted, being where we are, with this huge open ocean and the sun setting directly in front of you. And you paddle through that little bit of turbulence, which is obviously the water rushing in as part of the high tide coming in. Mm-hmm. Once you break through that little section, it becomes so calm. And you're paddling, and literally paddling in this golden light of a sunset. And every time I go out there, I just have to stop, sit, and I'm just gobsmacked. It is literally like paddling into the world's most stunning painting. You could not, you couldn't. It's one of those moments in time each time where you think I cannot imagine anything being more beautiful. I just can't. And of course it can be, because then every now and then you get a dolphin that comes up and says hello. That makes it even more stunningly beautiful. Yep. But yeah, nature can really leave you in absolute awe. That's what leaves me in awe. But I guess that's the beautiful thing about nature. Everyone's got an opportunity to go find out what's going to leave their jaw drop down on the floor. Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be as magnificent as a vista, that you've described, although that sounds fantastic. For me, sometimes it's amazing to look and see a bird, drinking at one of the little water features that we've got here, or to watch a spider. Sorry, if my daughter's listening, she doesn't like the S words, but watch a spider creating a web, and looking at the rhythm of its feet as it pulls the web from its body, and it is just amazing. What it does for me, I think, is remind me that I shouldn't get my head so caught up in the ridiculousness of the to's and fro's of thinking about, either how important or how nothing I am in the world. I am merely a part of this whole tapestry, and I just love that return to rationality that looking at the amazing complexity of the world gives you.
Yeah, and I think that's the catch-22, isn't it? To circle back to a term that has changed or has been brought into our language, because to discover the beauty all around us is also to realise how fragile it is. Well, not only in the sense of the mortality that we all experience, but it's hard to not feel the anxiety and frustration when it comes to for example, politics or global politics, etc. Because there are people in positions that have the ability to take away our enjoyment of the simple things like nature. And so it's such a weird thing to sort of balance, and that is love nature. But then how much time do you give to the insanity that is also destroying nature? And it's a bit of balance. But yes, when it comes to spiders, we had a lovely Orby. I don't know what sort of orb it was. Started to spin her web right outside my kitchen door, which I open every night to, for the cat.
Yep.
And so for about a week there, really enjoyed it because I'm always cooking. So I turn the outdoor light on, and while I'm shopping, I'm watching her do a web with it's like watching an amazing concert guitarist with fingers. It's just like just doing such intricate stuff. But alas, she's moved her web on, probably because I kept walking into it in the morning. But that's what I like about orbs. They're one of the spiders that eased my arachnophobia, especially when I was, spent 10 years in Queensland, and they've got golden orbs obviously up there. And I realised that they made a deal at some point with us humans. They sort of said, look, I'll stay away from you. You stay away. I'm just going to hang out up here. And if I put my web a bit low and you walk into it, my apologies, I'll readjust it. And one of the places I lived, it virtually had a web bridge from the front gate to the front door. So probably 1 foot above your head was just all orbs. Just
there you go.
And it was just like they built it perfectly, knowing that we were walking in. Yeah. And if you did bump it, it'd be like, oh, my bad, sorry, I'll pull that up. But I love those spiders because they don't come into your house. They don't go stalking around, and they're not going to suddenly appear in your quilt while you're watching TV at night.
Well, the extra rain has forced, I think, a number of our house is mud brick, and there are lots of different spots that they can bring themselves in. So I have been gently encouraging them out, glass, slide a piece of paper, outside glass, slide a paper, outside. So,
Well, you're braver than I am. I've still got an unnatural fear of spiders. But I am trying to remind myself of the infinite beauty, even in spiders. So that nature is. So every time I see a spider now, I'm trying to imagine them as a cartoon character. But when it comes to the giant huntsmans we get around here, I'm still struggling.
Oh, well, we do get a lot of huntsmans over this way too. But anyway, we call them Bob over here, and that's a story for another day. And again, I'll leave that one to my daughter. All right. Now,
excellent.
It's time for us to think about getting a new tagline sound going. But before we go, if you like or enjoyed listening to the podcast, don't forget this is episode 25. There are 24 more episodes, hours and hours of entertainment for you to listen to from your favourite podcasting platform, the Australian Book Lovers Podcast. And please leave us a star or a few words. Let us know what you thought. That helps us get in front of more listeners, and it makes us feel good too that we're putting some good work out there. You can follow us on social media. Twitter, we are at Australian Books. Facebook and Instagram, we are at Australian Book Lovers. And you can also join our newsletter by subscribing on our Book Lovers page on the website, which is www.australianbooklovers.com. So lots of ways to get news and updates. And of course, we have a giveaway at the moment, which is Averil Drummond, who we interviewed today. She's given us 2 copies of her fabulous book, Gloam. And you can jump in, subscribe, and let us know what you think we should be doing about global warming, and you can go into the draw for one of those paperbacks. Are you ready, Darren?
I am ready, and I was just thinking, sorry for that brief pause. I was thinking episode number 25, I've got a hybrid of Buck Rogers and Duck Dodgers in my head. And so I figure, and we're talking about Gloam, and that's part of the science fiction. So how about we try and do 1950 style as aliens coming down to Earth? So, that monotone, and I am...
Okay, all right.
And then I will have a bit of a play, and let's see if we can do some cool not spaceship style,
Beautiful.
I don't do a very good spaceship impersonation. Sounded more like Jimi Hendrix, but on his guitar, but I am ready.
Okay, so take care for now, and remember to read more Aussie books.
Okay, that's going to be fun to do. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us for episode 25 of the Australian Book Lovers Podcast. Take care, and I look forward to joining you once again soon.
Bye for now.
Let's meet again when magic happens.
Australian Book Lovers acknowledges First Nations peoples and recognises their continuous connection to country, community and to culture. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and honour the sharing of traditional stories passed down through generations. We're committed to a safe and inclusive welcome for authors and readers of all cultures and backgrounds, including people of LGBTQIA+ communities and their families.